It didn't start with a question, it started with a smirk. A cold, knowing smirk from Arnold Schwarzenegger that made half the studio go dead quiet before a single word was spoken. The cameras were already rolling. The tension nuclear on live TV, seated just a few feet from Donald Trump. Arnold turned his head slowly, looked dead into the lens, and said with razor precision, "She's an immigrant, right? But does she even belong with you?" It was a verbal missile, fired with no warning, no buildup, just detonation. Trump didn't laugh. He didn't blink. His face, frozen in shock, twitched once, barely, but enough to reveal what everyone else now sensed. This was not political theater. This was personal. And the battleground was Melania. If you believe it's time to stand up, not for ego, not for image, but for truth, accountability, and real leadership, then share this story. Let the world know you still believe in voices that don't run from the truth. Drop your country name and city in the comments. Let's show how far truth can reach when we face it together. The set was no ordinary talk show. It was the primetime broadcast of America Unfiltered, a live debate forum that millions watched religiously. The night's topic: patriotism and the immigrant dream. Trump, suited up and cocky as ever, had already hijacked the conversation, bragging about Melania's perfect immigration story as a weapon to attack those crossing borders today. "She did it the right way," he said proudly. "She waited. She followed the law. Unlike the chaos we see now, she earned this life." That was the setup. Trump thought he had the winning hand. He was wrong. Arnold, once mocked for his accent and dismissed as just a muscle guy, had endured decades of American scrutiny. But now, he was the elder statesman in the room, calm, deliberate, dangerous, and he wasn't playing defense. "You say, she earned this life," he began, his voice calm but cutting. "But what exactly did she earn? A golden cage? A lifetime of pretending on camera?" He paused, let the words rot in the air. Then he added, "You praise her citizenship like it's a trophy. But have you ever considered, maybe you were the price?" Trump's lips parted, but no words came out. The audience was stunned. This wasn't some tabloid jab. Arnold wasn't mocking the marriage. He was exposing it. Not with gossip, but with brutal logic. He made the viewers question everything: the body language, the staged smiles, the awkward hand-holding moments. Was Melania's story really about freedom, or was it about survival? Social media exploded. Within seconds, hashtags like hashtag MELANIA, trap, and hashtag immigrant irony were trending. Memes popped up showing Trump holding a green card while Melania held a leash. Even celebrities started weighing in, with one tweet reading, "Arnold didn't just clap back. He surgically dismantled a Fakaday." Trump, sensing the walls closing in, tried to recover. "This is disgusting," he snapped. "We're here to talk about immigration, not my marriage." But it was too late. Arnold leaned back with a shrug, as if bored, and muttered, "Then stop dragging your wife into every conversation like she's your only proof you love this country." Gasps, actual gasps, then laughter, nervous, electric, contagious. The studio audience was erupting. Trump looked around in disbelief, his once loyal crowd slipping away. Even the moderators were stunned, their cue cards now irrelevant. The narrative had flipped, and Arnold had taken full control. And just when everyone thought it couldn't go further, Arnold leaned in one last time, voice barely above a whisper, and said, "You say she earned this country. But after watching you, day after day, I wonder if she regrets it." And that was the moment the lights didn't just shine on Arnold, they burned Trump alive. It started with laughter, the cold, polite kind, not because something was funny, but because people weren't sure what else to do. Trump had just dropped a line he thought would land like a knockout punch. "Arnold's lecturing me about marriage," he scoffed, eyebrows raised. The only ring he's ever held onto was in a bodybuilding contest. He smiled like a man who thought he was winning. Then came the follow-up, cruel and calculated. "At least Melania's loyal. She stayed, which is more than I can say for your wife. Or your voters." That last part hit with the sharpness of a poisoned dart. Some in the audience chuckled. The loyalists, the ones who always laughed when Trump insulted someone. But the rest, their smiles twitched. Their posture shifted. Something felt off. Arnold didn't laugh. He didn't move. He just stared, expressionless, unreadable, as if calculating whether Trump was still worth the oxygen. A beat passed, then another, and finally, with the slow calm of a man who knows he's about to flip the entire room, Arnold spoke. "You know what I've learned, Donald," he said, voice low and measured. "People who talk the most about loyalty are usually the ones who've done the most to lose it." The audience went still, not dead quiet. No, this silence vibrated. Like something dangerous was winding up. Arnold leaned forward, elbows on the desk, gaze locked like a missile. "You parade Melania around like she's your proof of legitimacy, your immigrant wife, your political shield. You tell people she did it the right way. But have you ever once asked her if she wanted to be your example, or if she just wanted to be your partner?" Trump opened his mouth to interrupt, but Arnold held up a hand, not angrily, but like a judge silencing a child in court. She worked, she sacrificed. She navigated a country, a language, a culture, all for a dream. And somewhere, along the way, she got trapped in yours. The lights, the headlines, the Trump show. Maybe she stayed. But not all prisons have bars. Some have pen. Now the studio was reacting. Subtle nods. Lips pressed tight. The kind of tension that camera operators live for. The crowd knew they were watching something unplanned, unrehearsed. Asterisk. Real asterisk. Trump's smile was gone. You mock me for my past. You bring up my divorce, my failures. Good, Arnold said, voice rising ever so slightly. Because I own mine. I've lived with consequences. You bury yours. You drag your wife into your political mess. Use her silence as consent, her status as a badge. But I've seen her face, Donald. We all have. She doesn't look proud. She looks tired. Trump leaned in aggressively. You don't know anything about my marriage. Stay in your lane. Arnold sat back and nodded slowly. You're right. I don't know the private details. But I know this. When someone stays silent long enough in the shadow of a loud man, it's not because they agree. It's because they're surviving. The audience gasped. Then murmurs, then a single clap from the back row. Then two, then a ripple of applause began, hesitant but growing. A movement of people realizing they were no longer just watching a show. They were watching a reckoning. Trump tried to recover, waving a hand like he could erase the last minute with a gesture. You're twisting everything. You don't know her. You don't know us. Arnold's eyes narrowed. No, he said, but maybe she doesn't know you anymore either. That line hit like a gavel. And just like that, the stage no longer belonged to Trump. The smirks were gone. The crowd had turned. The balance of power had shifted, not with shouting, but with silence, precision, and truth. Arnold sat still, composed, unbothered. Trump sat beside him, visibly rattled, blinking faster. Fists clenched under the table, scanning the room for someone, anyone, still on his side, and for the first time in years, Donald Trump looked, small. This wasn't the climax. This was the fracture, the beginning of a public unraveling. The moment when America didn't just laugh at a Trump joke, they looked past it and saw the man behind it. Saw the cracks, the insecurity, the fear. And as Arnold looked calmly ahead, the audience leaned in, not because the show was over, but because it had just begun. It didn't begin with a rebuttal, it began with a laugh. But not Arnold's this time, Trump's. Loud, hollow, and cruel, the kind of laugh bullies use when they feel their grip slipping and they need to remind the room who's boss. He sat forward, hands clenched into fists, a fire of desperation flickering behind his eyes. You really want to go there, Arnold? Trump sneered, voice louder now, cracking just slightly. You think you're some kind of immigrant messiah, because you came here with abs and an accent. Please, you were Hollywood's pet project. A walking bicep with a catchphrase. You didn't climb the American dream, you were airlifted into it. The crowd tensed, the tone had shifted. This wasn't political anymore, this was personal. You're a fraud, Trump barked, pointing directly at him now. A musclehead who cheated on his wife, lied to his voters, and hid behind cameras when real men were out making decisions. You think you're tough. You're just a carefully edited fantasy. You've never stood alone in the storm. You've never been under real pressure, not like I have. Then the smirk returned. You want to talk about Melania? Fine, at least my wife isn't hiding from me. At least she's not terrified of what might come out next. You talk about her being trapped, but maybe she just knows loyalty. Something you clearly never learned. Gasped some outright. A few people even shook their heads in disbelief. But Trump wasn't finished. You speak so highly of truth. But your truth is just what sells best. You say you've changed. Please, you've just gotten better at disguising your ego as humility. Then, like a snake going in for the final strike, he leaned closer to Arnold, eyes gleaming. You're just another washed-up relic. America loved your story once, but now you're just background noise. The words hung in the air, like the stench of something rotting. Arnold didn't blink, didn't speak. He sat still, letting the attack finish itself. And then he smiled. Not smugly, not sarcastically, cold like a man who knew exactly where to hit back. You done, he said quietly. The room froze. Arnold leaned forward, both hands on the desk. You call me a fraud. Let's talk about fraud. You lied to your voters, to your business partners, to your own employees. You built an empire of lawsuits and broken promises, and then you looked the American people in the eye and told them you were the answer. His voice was rising now, steady, controlled, but every syllable landed like a bullet. You talk about pressure. Real pressure is watching your child find out the truth about you from a headline. Real pressure is walking into your own house knowing you broke something sacred and you have to fix it yourself. That's pressure. What you feel, Donald, is just exposure, and it terrifies you. The audience was glued. Every breath, every glance, the studio felt electric. Arnold didn't stop. You think I hid from my scandals? No, I owned them. I stood up, took the hit, and rebuilt. You deny, distract, deflect. You point at your wife and call her loyalty. But here's the truth. Silence isn't loyalty. Silence is survival. And the only reason she stays silent is because you've made sure her voice doesn't matter. Trump tried to interrupt, but Arnold kept going, his tone sharper now. You think I'm irrelevant? Then why are you shaking? Why are your eyes darting? Why are you still talking to me? And then, Arnold leaned back, crossed his arms, and delivered the line that shattered the room. You built a tower with your name on it. I built a legacy with mine. One will crumble. The other will stand long after the cameras stop rolling. The audience erupted, not just applause, but something more primal. Cheers, gasps. People were on their feet. Phones were filming. Live streams flooded with comments. Arnold just ended him. This was a demolition. Trump looks broken. And for the first time, Trump's face wasn't angry, it was afraid. He leaned toward Arnold, voice trembling. Behind clenched teeth. This isn't over. Arnold didn't even turn his head, just stared into the camera and said, "No, Donald, but your act might be." And that's when the internet caught fire. It ended exactly how no one expected, with a man known for never backing down, walking away. Trump didn't explode. He didn't lash out. He simply stood up, mid-broadcast, trembling with rage, lips pressed shut like a dam about to break. He didn't look at Arnold. He didn't address the audience. He didn't even say goodbye. He just turned, stumbled slightly on the step, and disappeared behind the curtain like a ghost retreating from its own reflection. The room didn't cheer. Not yet, because no one knew if what they just witnessed was real or history. The camera stayed fixed on Arnold, still seated, hands calmly folded in his lap, face unreadable. The silence was dense, unshakable, until he finally looked up, straight into the lens, and broke it with just 3 words. So that's it. He rose. No theatrics, no smirk, just presence, a weight that replaced the vacuum Trump left behind. He ran, Arnold said, his voice now firm and cutting. And not because I won an argument. Not because I yelled louder, but because the truth has a way of unmasking cowards. And tonight, it ripped his face clean off. Now the crowd stirred. People started nodding. Whispers turned into murmurs. And Arnold, like a conductor raising his baton one final time, spoke directly to the world. I've been called many things. Actor, politician, immigrant, failure. But one thing I've never been is fake. I've faced shame. I've faced loss. I've faced headlines with my name soaked in scandal. And I took it all because that's what responsibility looks like. He pointed back at the now empty chair. What you just saw, walk off that stage. That's what fear looks like. A man so terrified of being exposed. He chose flight over fight. The same man who calls himself strong, who demands loyalty, who wears his wife like a badge and his name like a crown. His voice dropped lower. You can lie to the world. You can lie to your followers. But the one thing you can never lie to is the mirror. A stunned hush filled the room. Cameras rolled. Phones trembled in hands. The live chat online exploded. In capital letters, fire emojis, and disbelief. Arnold wasn't finished. This country was built on sweat, on sacrifice, on truth, not on empty slogans and stolen spotlights. Not on media manipulation or manufactured strength, but on people. Real people who show up, own their failures, and keep going. He stepped closer now, eyes locked into the lens. Words now, not just a statement, but a warning. And if you're watching this thinking, that could never be me, let me say this clearly, it already is you. Every time you stay silent, while someone lies, every time you look away because it's more comfortable, every time you cheer for power instead of principle, the audience was silent again, but this time it was reverent, waiting. Arnold's final words came like thunder, not loud, but unshakable. This wasn't about 2 men arguing. This was about who we become when the cameras aren't rolling. So now the question is yours to answer. When truth finally walks into the room, will you stay and face it, or will you get up and run like he did? Then the screen cut, and the internet, and the silence he left behind exploded into something history wouldn't forget.